The Battle of the Granckcus. May 334 BCE. This was Alexander's first clash with the Persians, and it was brutal. The Macedonian army, led by Alexander the Great, faced off against the Persian army led by King Darius III. The battle was fought near the Granckcus River in modern-day Turkey. The Macedonian cavalry charged into the river, taking on the Persian infantry. It was a deadly charge. The river was only waist-deep, but the impact of the collision was so great that it knocked both armies off their feet. Horses and men fell into the water, all fighting for control of the riverbank. It was a tough battle, but the Macedonians, with their superior cavalry, eventually won the day. They pushed the Persians back across the river and secured the bank. This victory was a great start to Alexander's campaign against the Persians, but it came at a cost. Many of his men were killed or wounded, and as he stood there surveying the battlefield, he knew that this was just the beginning. Having successfully crossed the Hellespont and made his symbolic pilgrimage to Troy, Alexander rendezvoused with Parmenian and the Macedonian advance force, which had been operating in Asia Minor for nearly 2 years. Now united, the full Greek-Macedonian army marched eastward from Aristotle, seeking to engage the enemy. The Persian satraps of the western provinces, Arsites of Hellespont and Phrygia, Mithridates of Lydia and Ionia, Mithrabussans of Cappadocia, and others, had gathered their forces to confront this invasion. They were joined by Memnon of Rhodes, the highly respected Greek mercenary general in Persian service. A council of war was held among the Persian commanders. Memnon, keenly aware of the superior quality of the Macedonian infantry and Alexander's tactical genius, proposed a cautious strategy. Avoid a pitched battle. Implement a scorched earth policy to deny Alexander's supplies, destroy crops and cities, and withdraw eastward. Luring the Macedonians deeper into Asia, he also advocated using the powerful Persian fleet to carry the war to Greece itself, to stir up rebellion and cut Alexander's lines of communication. This was sound advice, but it was deeply unpopular with the Persian satraps. They were unwilling to devastate their own wealthy territories and were overconfident in their cavalry, believing they could crush the young Macedonian king in a swift, decisive engagement. Arsites, the satrap of Hellespont and Phrygia, in whose territory they stood, declared he would not allow a single house in his domain to be burned. The satrap's view prevailed. They would fight the Persian army, numbering perhaps 20,000 cavalry and nearly as many infantry, many of whom were Greek mercenaries, took up a strong defensive position on the eastern bank of the Granckcus River. The river itself, though not exceptionally wide or deep in May, had steep, uneven banks, making an assault across it difficult. The Persians made a critical tactical error. They deployed their excellent cavalry in a long line directly along the top of the riverbank, with their Greek mercenary infantry held in reserve some distance behind them on higher ground. This positioning meant their cavalry would have to fight a static, defensive battle, negating their mobility, and their superior infantry would not be immediately engaged. When Alexander's army arrived on the western bank in the afternoon, they saw the Persians arrayed for battle. Parmenian, Alexander's veteran, second in command, surveyed the formidable enemy position and the difficulty of an uphill assault across the river, especially late in the day. He advised Alexander to encamp and wait until morning, suggesting they could cross unopposed at dawn, as the Persians would likely withdraw a little from the bank to avoid a surprise night attack, or, if not, the Macedonians would be fresh. Alexander, characteristically impatient and eager for glory, rejected this counsel. He famously retorted, "I should be ashamed of myself if, after crossing the Hellespont so easily, I should be afraid of this paltry stream. Macedonians are not accustomed to fear rivers. He was determined to attack immediately, fearing any delay might embolden the enemy or allow them to escape. Alexander arrayed his army for the assault. He himself took command of the right wing, with the elite companion cavalry, the hypaspists, the Agrianian javelin men, and Paeonian light cavalry, along with archers and several syntagmata of the phalanx. Parmenion commanded the left wing, comprising the Thessalian cavalry, allied Greek horsemen, Thracian cavalry, and the remainder of the phalanx. The battle began with a probing attack by a squadron of companion cavalry under Amyntas, son of Arrhabaeus, along with some light infantry directed towards the Persian to lift. This advance guard crossed the river but was met by a furious charge from Persian cavalry and suffered heavy losses before being driven back. This initial encounter may have been a feint or designed to test the enemy's resolve and draw their attention. Then, Alexander, at the head of the main body of the companion cavalry on the right, personally led the charge. His distinctive armor and the 2 white plumes on his helmet made him an easily identifiable target. Shouting encouragement to his men, he plunged into the Granckcus, angling upstream against the current, and led his horsemen up the slippery, treacherous bank into the teeth of the Persian cavalry. A desperate melee ensued. Alexander fought with conspicuous bravery, his spear shattering. He called for another from his attendant, Demaratus of Corinth, whose spear was also broken. Demaratus handed him his own. Alexander then engaged Mithridates, Darius III's son-in-law, striking him in the face through his armor. As Mithridates fell, another Persian noble, Rosaces, rode at Alexander and struck him on the head with his scimitar, shearing off one of his plumes and cracking his helmet, but not seriously wounding him. As Rosaces prepared for a second fatal blow, Cletus the Black, son of Dropids, commander of the royal squadron of companions, galloped up and with a swift thrust of his spear, or, according to some, by severing Rosaces' arm with his sword, saved Alexander's life. Just then, Spithridates the satrap of Ionia also charged Alexander from the side or rear. But he too was killed by Cletus before he could strike the king. While Alexander and his companions were locked in this life or death struggle, the Macedonian phalanx began its difficult crossing of the river, facing a hail of javelins. They fought their way up the bank and engaged the Persian line. The battle hung in the balance. However, the Persian cavalry, already disordered by the ferocity of Alexander's attack and the losses among their leaders, began to give way as the Macedonian phalanx gained a firm footing on the eastern bank and the hypaspists pressed forward. The Persian center broke, and soon the entire Persian cavalry wing was in flight. With the Persian cavalry routed, Alexander and his Macedonians turned their attention to the thousands of Greek mercenaries who had been stationed in reserve and had watched the cavalry battle without participating. These mercenaries, now isolated and without cavalry support, found themselves surrounded by Alexander's victorious army. They appealed for quarter, but Alexander, enraged at Greeks fighting for the barbarians against the declared Panhellenic cause, was in no mood for mercy. He ordered his forces to attack. The mercenaries, fighting desperately, were almost entirely annihilated. Only about 2,000 were taken prisoner. Later sent to Macedon to work in chains as a harsh lesson to other Greeks. The Macedonian victory was complete and decisive, achieved at a remarkably low cost. Perhaps only around 100 to 120 Macedonians were killed, including 25 of the companion cavalry who fell in the initial charge and were later honored by Alexander with bronze statues sculpted by Lysippus. Persian losses were heavy, numbering in the thousands, including many prominent nobles and commanders. In the aftermath, Alexander personally visited his wounded, inquired about their deeds, and ordered a magnificent funeral for the fallen. He granted tax exemptions to the families of the Macedonian dead. As a powerful propaganda gesture, he sent 300 suits of captured Persian armor panoplies to Athens to be dedicated to Athena on the Acropolis, with the inscription, "Alexander, son of Philip, and the Greeks," except the Lacedaemonians, Spartans, from the barbarians who inhabit Asia. The victory at the Granckcus shattered the confidence of the remaining Persian forces in Western Asia Minor and opened the way for Alexander's advance south along the Aegean coast. It was a stunning display of his personal courage, tactical daring, and the fighting quality of his army. If you enjoyed our video, give us a like and subscribe for more. Take good care of people and environment around you. Plant a tree, even if you see the day of judgment imminent. Saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who also said, "Don't waste water even if you're sitting next to a running stream." Got an idea to further improve our vlogs? Please do let me know. Stay blessed always.